Would you spend 15 years in solitary confinement for a $2 million reward? I'm Dre, and this is The Midnight Hour. Tonight we are going to be looking at one of Russia's most famous writers, Anton Chekhov, and we are specifically looking at his short story, The Bet. And The Bet is really about two main people, a banker and a lawyer. The banker is extremely wealthy. The lawyer is a little bit on the younger side, so he's just starting his career. And what the situation is that the banker is throwing a party at his house for all of his rich friends and all of his acquaintances even, and the lawyer shows up. And the two start debating life sentences. They start debating whether capital punishment or life imprisonment is the worst situation of the two. And so the lawyer says, I would much rather be imprisoned for life than executed. And the banker starts pounding his fist on the table. He says, no way. I would rather be instantly killed than having to slowly be drained of life throughout an extremely long life sentence. So to that end, they make a bet. And the banker puts up 2 million rubles that the lawyer can't spend 5 years in solitary confinement. The lawyer says, let's do it, but let's not only do 5 years, let's do 15 years. I bet 15 years of my life that I could spend it in solitary confinement for your 2 million. So they make that bet, and the banker ponders for a while, why would he make such a bet? But he goes through with it anyway, and instead of sending him to a prison, he builds a cottage in his garden. The banker builds a cottage in his garden for the lawyer to stay the full 15 years. And it's 15 years on the dot to the minute, from noon on this date to noon on that date. And what ends up happening is that the lawyer, for the first few years, does this and that, but then by the 6th year, starts reading constantly. Just does not do anything else but read and read. And over the years, the banker, who was once extremely wealthy, has lost almost all of his money due to bad investments and just living a wild lifestyle. So now he fears paying the 2 million rubles to the lawyer. He's extremely anxious about it. So he decides to actually off the lawyer. And it is the night before the lawyer is to be released. So the banker sneaks into the cottage ever so gently and finds the lawyer there asleep at his desk, and is about to take the lawyer, throw him onto the bed and smother him, but then catches sight of a letter on the desk. The letter outlines the lawyer's intention to forfeit the 2 million rubles by leaving the cottage 5 hours early before his due time to be released, because he's allowed to leave whenever he wants. It even says willful isolation is so much harder than necessary isolation. When you're forced to be by yourself in solitary confinement, it's much easier than when you're deciding to stay there. And the lawyer decided to stay there 15 years. And so the banker is stunned and he can't believe it. He basically doesn't have to pay the 2 million at this point. But what shocks the banker even more is that the lawyer has reached this type of understanding and this type of level where he doesn't need the money anymore. He's reached true happiness. He's found something better and bigger than materialistic things. Whereas the banker is obsessed with staying wealthy. So he goes home, returns to bed, and just begins to weep and weep. The next day, they find that the lawyer has indeed left the cottage 5 hours early, and the banker takes the letter from the desk, puts it in his pocket, returns home, locks it up in a safe, and that is how the story ends. And he really does that so that there won't be much discourse as to why the lawyer did what he did. So now the 3 sections we're going to read are a little bit on the longer side, but they really, really get to the heart of this story in a much better way than I could describe it here. So let's get to the first section, and it is when the lawyer and the banker actually make the bet at the party. It says, among the guests was a lawyer, a young man of about 25. When asked his opinion, he said, capital punishment and life imprisonment are equally immoral. But if I were offered the choice between execution and life in prison, I would of course choose the second. To live somehow is better than not to live at all. An animated discussion followed. The banker, who was then younger and more high-strung, suddenly lost his temper, pounded his fist on the table, and shouted at the young lawyer, "That's not true. I'll bet 2 million rubles that you can't sit out even 5 years in a prison cell." "If you're serious," said the lawyer, "I'll bet I can sit out not 5, but 15. 15? You're on," shouted the banker. "Gentlemen, I stake 2 million. "I accept. You stake your millions, and I stake my freedom," said the lawyer. And this wild, senseless bet was made. The banker, who back then had untold millions, a spoiled and light-minded man, was delighted with the bet. At supper, he made fun of the lawyer and said, "Come to your senses, young man, before it's too late. For me, 2 million is a trifle, but you risk losing 3 or 4 of the best years of your life. I say 3 or 4 because you won't sit it out longer. And also don't forget, poor fellow, that voluntary confinement is much harder than compulsory. The thought that you have the right every moment to go out into freedom will poison your whole existence in the cell. I pity you." Why he didn't take the 5 years instead of 15 is something that always kind of bugged me once I first read this story, but then I realized he must be that passionate and believe that much in his stance. So let's read the second section now that really goes over what the lawyer does during his 15-year imprisonment. And it says, in his first year of confinement, the lawyer, judging by his brief notes, suffered greatly from solitude and boredom. The sounds of the piano were heard coming from the cottage constantly, day and night. He renounced wine and tobacco. Wine, he wrote, awakened desires, and desires are a prisoner's worst enemies. Besides, nothing is more boring than drinking good wine and seeing nobody, and tobacco befouled the air in his room. In the first year, the lawyer was predominantly sent books of light content. Novels with complex love plots, crime or fantastic stories, comedies, and so on. In the second year, the music in the shed fell silent, and the lawyer requested only classics in his notes. In the fifth year, music was heard again, and the prisoner requested wine. Those who kept watch on him through the window said that all that year he only ate, drank, and lay in bed, yawned frequently, and talked angrily to himself. He did not read books. Sometimes during the night he sat down to wrote for a long time, and in the morning tore up everything he had written. More than once they heard him weep. In the second half of the sixth year, the prisoner began a study of languages, philosophy, and history. He took it up so eagerly that the banker barely had time to order books for him. In the course of 4 years, some 600 volumes were ordered at his request. During the period of this passion, the banker received, incidentally, the following letter from his prisoner. "My dear jailer, I am writing these lines to you in 6 languages. Show them to knowledgeable persons. Let them read them. If they do not find a single mistake, then I beg you, have a shot fired in the garden. That will let me know that my efforts have not been in vain. The geniuses of all ages and countries speak in different languages, but the same fire burns in them. Oh, if you knew what unearthly happiness now fills my soul, because I am able to understand them. The prisoner's wish was fulfilled. The banker ordered 2 shots to be fired in the garden. Then, after the 10th year, the lawyer sat motionless at a desk and read nothing but the gospel. It seemed strange to the banker that a man who, in the course of 4 years, had gone through 600 sophisticated volumes, could spend nearly a year reading one easily understandable and not very thick book. After the gospel came the history of religions and theology. In the last 2 years of confinement, the prisoner read a great deal without any discrimination. First, he studied natural science, then requested Byron and Shakespeare. There were notes from him asking to be sent at the same time chemistry and medical textbooks, and a novel and some philosophical or theological treatises. His reading made it seem as if he was swimming in the sea in the midst of a shipwreck, and, wishing to save his life, was greedily clutching at one piece of wreckage, then another. So what I get from that is that when there is nothing else left to do, and your reality is so dim, you just need to escape it by living someone else's reality. You need to see through someone else's eyes. And that's why he reads as much as he does. I think he just wants to escape, and he does a great job at it. Now, the third section we're going to read is his letter to the outside world that the banker finds the night before the lawyer is to be released. And it says, "Tomorrow at 12 noon, I will be granted freedom and the right to associate with people. But before I leave this room and see the sun, I find it necessary to say a few words. With a clear conscience and before God who sees me, I declare to you that I scorn freedom and life and health and all that is known in your books as worldly blessings. For 15 years, I have attentively studied earthly life. True, I have seen neither earth nor people, but in your books I have drunk fragrant wine, sung songs, chased deer and wild boar in the forests, loved women, beauties, airy as clouds, created by the magic of poets of genius, have visited me by night and whispered wondrous tales that intoxicated me. In your books, I climbed the peaks of Elbrus and Mont Blanc, and from there I saw the sun rise in the mornings and in the evenings flood the sky, the ocean, and the mountain peaks with crimson gold. From there I saw flashes of lightning cleave the clouds above me. I saw green forests, fields, rivers, lakes, cities. I heard sirens sing and shepherds' pipes play. I touched the wings of beautiful devils who flew to me to talk about God. In your books, I threw myself into the bottomless abyss, performed miracles, killed, burned cities, preached new religions, conquered whole kingdoms. Your books gave me wisdom. Everything that tireless human thought has created in the course of centuries is compressed in my skull into a small lump. I know that I am more intelligent than all of you, and I scorn your books. I scorn all the world's blessings and its wisdom. It is all paltry and fleeting, and as deceptive as a mirage. You may be proud, wise, and beautiful, but death will wipe you from the face of the earth the same as cellar mice, and your descendants, history, the immortality of your geniuses will freeze or burn along with the terrestrial globe. You have lost your minds and are following the wrong path. You take falsehood for truth and ugliness for beauty. You would be amazed if, Owing to certain circumstances, apple and orange trees suddenly produced frogs and lizards instead of fruit, or roses smelled of horse sweat. So am I amazed at you, who have exchanged the sky for the earth? I do not want to understand you. To show you in practice my scorn for what you live by, I renounce the 2 million that I once dreamed of as paradise, and which I now scorn. To deprive myself of my right to it, I will leave here 5 hours before the agreed term, thereby breaking the contract. I think the ability to do great things when there are zero distractions almost is like an unrealistic focus. We don't get that chance in life, but this lawyer just got that chance and he used it to the utmost extreme. And I think that when you've acquired so much knowledge, materialistic things may start to seem petty. And that's what is his situation right now. I think that's why the lawyer is so against wanting to be like everyone else at this point. He's just gotten to such a new level that he doesn't want to look back. He doesn't want to go back to who he was, and that person who dreamt of those 2 million and just wanted so badly to live that good lifestyle. He now has so much knowledge that he's living the best lifestyle possible without those earthly blessings. So that was kind of my take on this story. Like this video if you felt something, comment with what you thought, and I will see you next Sunday at the midnight hour.